What's going on with XRP and XLM? Right now, Ripple is back in the headlines, and not just for its ongoing war with the SEC, but for flipping the 385% narrative. In a bold move, Ripple is now challenging the very rules the SEC used to claim XRP is a security. At the same time, a growing number of traders are asking a different question entirely. Is Stellar's XLM a cheaper and maybe even smarter bet than XRP? Right now, these two narratives, Ripple's legal showdown and Stellar's positioning as a potential alternative, are converging at a moment when the entire crypto market is preparing for its next phase of institutional adoption. So in this video, we're breaking down both sides, Ripple's latest legal strategy against the SEC and what it means for XRP's future, why some in the market are turning to XLM as a cost-effective hedge, or even a replacement for XRP. Let's get into the first story. Ripple's bold move against the SEC. Ripple's bold legal strategy. Not just defense, but offense. Ripple just flipped the entire legal narrative. This isn't just about defending XRP anymore. Ripple is now going on. The offensive targeting the SEC's variability to define what a security even is in the world of crypto. Let's break this down in its latest court filing. Ripple didn't just reiterate that XRP isn't a security. It took a wrecking ball to the foundation of the SEC's case. The company is essentially saying, these rules don't apply to us, they were never clear, and frankly, they were never written for crypto in the first place. This is a direct hit at the Howey test, the decades-old legal framework the SEC keeps using to judge whether digital assets are securities. Ripple's stance, you can't use a test from 1946 designed for orange groves in Florida to regulate real-time crypto transactions on decentralized exchanges in 2025. But Ripple isn't stopping there. Their legal team is also hammering home the lack of fair notice doctrine. This is crucial. Ripple argues that the SEC failed to provide clear advanced warning about how it would apply securities laws to XRP, and by extension to all crypto. That's a constitutional issue, not just a crypto one. If the government can't give you clear rules before punishing you for breaking them, the whole legal system collapses into selective enforcement. And here's where Ripple cranks the pressure up. Even further, they're pointing to secondary market activity, XRP traded on Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, etc., and asking the obvious but powerful question, how can Ripple be held liable for XRP transactions it had nothing to do with? That's like saying Ford is responsible for how people sell used Mustangs on Craigslist. It makes zero legal sense, yet the SEC is still pushing this theory. This is the moment where Ripple's legal team pivots from defense to offense. They're no longer just protecting their turf. They're challenging the very scope of the SEC's power over crypto. Because if Ripple wins this argument, especially around secondary markets and fair notice, it could the SEC's ability to go after other tokens using the same outdated playbook. Think about the Ripple effect. No pun intended, a ruling in Ripple's favor wouldn't just clear the path for XRP, it would establish a legal precedent for every other crypto project being targeted by the SEC. Right now, it would call into question the SEC's lawsuits against Coinbase, Uniswap, Kraken, and even projects like Solana or Algorand. In short, Ripple isn't just fighting for its own survival anymore, it's trying to redefine the rules of engagement for the entire crypto industry. And that's why this case matters more than most people realize. It's not just about XRP. It's about whether crypto has a legal future in the US without being regulated into oblivion. The stakes couldn't be higher, and Ripple just made its boldest move. Yet XRP's future, what's really at stake? Let's not sugarcoat it. This court case isn't just about whether Ripple has to cut a check or tweak a few practices. It's about the survival of XRP in US markets and possibly the future of how crypto assets are treated under American law. Because if the judge rules that XRP sales on secondary markets like Coinbase, Binance, Kraken do not count as securities transactions, that changes everything. It means XRP is no longer shackled by the same securities restrictions that have caused headaches for tokens like ADA. And even some stable coins, it means US exchanges can list XRP with confidence without the looming threat of an SEC takedown. It means XRP's liquidity returns full force, allowing institutions to step back and market makers to reopen the taps and US-based funds to get involved again. And you know what? That unlocks price, momentum, institutional access, cross-border utility. But let's flip the script if Ripple loses this part of the case. If the court agrees with the SEC that even XRP trading on secondary markets is somehow Ripple's responsibility, we could be looking at another round of delistings that would hit US exchanges hardest. It would shrink XRP's liquidity pool, and it would once again push XRP to the sidelines at a time when the entire crypto market is heating up. That's why Ripple is swinging for the fences right now, because this isn't about one company's reputation, it's about XRP's ability to compete on a global scale. Without regulatory clarity, XRP risks becoming a gray market token in its own home country. And here's the kicker. This case isn't unfolding in a vacuum. While Ripple fights in the courtroom, crypto investors are watching with cold, strategic eyes. Some are betting that Ripple wins and XRP moons. Others, they're already moving capital into assets that don't have legal baggage. And that brings us to Stellar and XLM. Because while Ripple's in a war with the SEC, Stellar's playing a very different game, a quieter one, but one that's positioning XLM as a cleaner, leaner alternative that hedges real, and some traders, funds, and even developers are starting to ask hard questions. Why wait around for a ruling on XRP when XLM already does much of the same thing without the legal baggage? And that's exactly what we're diving into next. Why XLM keeps popping up as the XRP alternative. Let's talk about XLM, the native token of the Stellar network, because while XRP is grabbing headlines, XLM is quietly emerging as the under-the-radar hedge play that more investors are beginning to notice. And no, XLM isn't just a copycat. It's a blood relative, a sibling, with a different philosophy born from the same code base. Why? Because Jed MB, one of Ripple's original co-founders, left Ripple and helped launch Stellar. He took the vision fast, cheap cross-border payments and rebuilt it with a different mission: financial inclusion, transparency, and decentralization. The result, a platform that does many of the same things as XRP, but with a distinctly more open source, nonprofit-driven ethos. Now let's talk about why XLM is getting serious attention right now, especially as Ripple's battle with the SEC drags on. One, it's cheaper, and that matters in a bull market. At face value, XLM trades at a much lower price than XRP. That might sound trivial, but in crypto psychology it matters. Retail investors, especially new ones, see a coin priced under 10 cents and think, this could 10 times, this could be the next big one. It's the same effect that sent Dogecoin and Shiba Inu soaring only this time. It's applied to a token with real utility, enterprise partnerships, and working infrastructure. In a speculative market price, perception drives volume, and XLM fits the mold of an affordable, undervalued coin with room to run too. No SEC baggage, this is the big one. Unlike Ripple, Stellar hasn't been sued, it hasn't been dragged into federal court, and more importantly, it hasn't had to argue over whether XLM is a security that makes it cleaner in the eyes of US exchanges, institutions, and even regulators. Think of it this way. If you're a fintech startup or a government agency looking to pilot a blockchain-based payment system, are you going to pick the token under legal fire, or the one that hasn't been touched exactly? That legal clarity, or at least the absence of legal controversy, is a strategic advantage right now. Stellar doesn't have to play defense. It's free to focus on building. Real-world traction is quietly accelerating, while XRP's attention is split between courtrooms and headlines. Stellar has been quietly laying down infrastructure. MoneyGram has integrated Stellar for real-world fiat on off-ramps, including Cryptotosh conversions in over 180 countries. Circle launched its stablecoin USDC on Stellar, making the network a viable base layer for stable asset transactions. Government-backed initiatives like Ukraine's pilot for a national digital currency arrived building on Stellar Tech's Stellar Development Foundation SDF even joined forces with IBM for cross-border payment trials years ago, which are still paying dividends today. XLM is quietly becoming a compliance-friendly enterprise-grade blockchain, but it's doing it without the hype, without lawsuits, and without resistance from US regulators. So while XRP is center stage fighting a public battle that could make or break the industry, XLM is building in the background steadily, strategically, and in many ways more adaptable to the current regulatory climate. It's not about who's louder, it's about who's prepared. And right now, XLM is starting to look like the insurance policy some investors want while they wait for XRP's outcome. But that leads to the next question. Can XLM actually compete with XRP at scale, or is it still an XRP shadow? That's exactly what we'll dig into next. Key differences between XRP and XLM most people miss. Most people get stuck comparing XRP and XLM based on price charts or who filed a lawsuit against whom. But here's the reality. These two tokens aren't fighting the same battle. They're operating in parallel lanes built on similar tech. But when especially on secondary market clarity, it could supercharge XRP's utility and unlock billions in sideline capital. But XLM is already executing, integrating, and avoiding the regulatory fire altogether. And that makes this more than a rivalry. It's a split strategy play. On one hand, you've got Ripple, the institutional powerhouse, fighting to shape the legal future of crypto. On the other, you've got Stellar moving in silence, serving the underserved, and building systems that don't need permission. The smart move, don't pick sides, play. Both XRP could explode on a regulatory victory. XLM could rise quietly as the hedge that outperforms while everyone's watching the courtroom. So now it's your turn. Which side are you on, XRP, XLM? Or both? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to stay ahead of the narratives that actually move the market, not just the noise hit, that subscribe button right now. This is Be Crypto Smart, where we cut through the hype and break down the strategy behind the headlines.